The time has come for people to demand truth, to look into the eyes of fear and say, no, I don't believe this.
What is happening? Something is going on. Can you feel the way?
Hi, welcome to Spiral Into It. I'm Fisk Smith. In this episode, we are going to show interviews with speakers who presented at the 9/11 inquiry in San Francisco at the Herbst Theater on March 26th through March 28th, 2004. September 11th, 2001 is the most important date in our country's history, because it is becoming increasingly clear that the official story of what happened on that date is far from the truth. In this series of shows, we intend to demonstrate through the voices of the 9/11 presenters how so many unrelated events are related, and the bigger picture is something much more sinister than most Americans will be able to handle. The first World Trade Center bombing, the bombings in Oklahoma City, and the events of 9/11 are all related. These events have effectively conditioned Americans to believe that government and more of its oppressive legislation is the only way to protect them from more terrorism. In the coming years, our oil industry policies will begin to reveal widespread destruction. These short-range, greedy, irresponsible policies will begin to unfold generations of famine, refugee migration, weather irregularities, economic disruptions, resource and gene wars on an unsuspecting public confused by the real issues. The powers that be know it is imperative to have broad-ranging legislative mechanisms in place to deal with these catastrophic events and to control its citizens and the anarchy that will follow. 9/11 was the linchpin of this public conditioning. So many questions about that day have not been addressed. The 9/11 Commission, the media, and all the branches of government are complicit in keeping this out of the public debate. Fighting terrorism has nothing to do with sustaining freedom. It has everything to do with creating more wealth for military corporations and Wall Street. It has everything to do with curtailing your freedom and conditioning the truth out of everybody on this planet. The time has come for people to demand truth, to look into the eyes of fear and say, no, I don't believe this. Take back common sense instead of fostering a world of us against them. We are them, and they are us. What is happening? Something is going on. Can you feel the weight?
The four bestsellers have been written about Barry Seal, the man who ran the cocaine smuggling through Mena, Arkansas, which the government said was the biggest drug smuggler in American history. He brought 5 tons of cocaine in through Mena in the 1980s to fuel the go-go 80s. And 4 bestsellers had been written about that episode, but none of them had asked us the simple question I asked: who was Barry Seal before he became this major drug smuggler? How did he just happen into this line of work? I discovered that Barry Seal was a lifelong CIA agent, who had been recruited in 1957 at a 2-week summer camp at the Louisiana Civil Air Patrol with fellow cadet Lee Harvey Oswald by a man by the name of David Ferry. I spent 2 years living with Barry Seal's widow. She cooperated with me for 2 years and gave me full access to his files. His files have been gone through by a 7-man team from the State Department in 1995, because Barry Seal had documents that would implicate the then current president, Bill Clinton, and as well as George Bush, the president just before him. But they had not bothered to go through her safe. And in Debbie Seal's safe, she had a keepsake that Barry had given her, and it was a nightclub photo. It had been taken in a Mexico City nightclub on January 22nd, 1963, and it is the only extant photo of the CIA's super-secret Operation 40 assassination squad. In that photo, along with Barry Seal, is Felix Rodriguez, who I'm sure you know or know of, William Houston Seymour, a man sent around because he looked like Oswald, to pose as Oswald, and sitting next to him is Frank Sturgis, who needs no introduction. So these are people who, since the late 50s, had an impact on our national life, and I had a photograph of them all together. Clearly, the CIA made a determination back probably in the 50s that control of the international narcotics trade was a key, if not the key, to world dominion. Currently today, any economist, I believe, will tell you that the international narcotics trade is the #1 or #2 industry in the world, followed by weapons. And indeed, the two are inextricably linked. The only thing that guerrillas around the world, rebels around the world that buy our weapons have to pay us with very often is drugs. Afghanistan, we are told, is the world's source for one key commodity, strategic commodity, and that's opium, which is refined into heroin. And we are also told that Osama bin Laden controlled Afghanistan, at least up until when we removed the Taliban. So that would make Osama bin Laden the world's heroin king. In fact, Osama bin Laden was the head of the world's first Islamic drug cartel. And it stands to reason, if I am the world's heroin king, I am going to want to sell my product through to the world's richest market, and that is the U.S. And indeed, in the same month that Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, the two pilots who took down the World Trade Center, between them, arrived in the U.S. to begin training at Huffman Aviation in Venice, Florida. The true owner of Huffman Aviation, a shadowy financier by the name of Wally Hilliard, had his Learjet confiscated on the runway of Orlando Executive Airport by DEA agents brandishing submachine guns, who discovered 43 pounds of heroin on board. 43 pounds of heroin is what is known in the trade, I'm told, as heavyweight. No one comes across 43 pounds of heroin by mistake. In the DEA affidavit filed with the court, it stated that that plane had made a weekly milk run to Venezuela and back for 30 times, 30 weekly runs before it was caught on the 31st time. The co-pilot of the plane was unnamed in the indictment, and that's probably because he's a DEA agent, station chief in Guyana, I believe, at the time. And the pilot of the plane, who was released along with the co-pilot, his day job is as the chief pilot for Venezuela's Air Force One. So clearly what I was looking at was the protected drug trade. In fact, it was by mistake that the plane got busted. Had DEA superiors known of what their underlings in Orlando were about to do, I'm sure they'd have called them off, because that's what happens in situations like this. The man who owned the flight school that Mohammed Atta made a beeline from Hamburg to attend had his Learjet confiscated. He didn't get it back after it was discovered with 43 pounds of heroin, and he's complicit in that. He was never charged. Those 30 weekly flights by two Arab men down and back were always paid for in cash. And anyone in the air charter business, certainly in Florida, will tell you that that's not a fact that's going to look very good at trial.